Hey guys, tonight we wander into shadows stretched long across desert sand, where the first caravans of the Silk Road begin to stir. You hear the shuffle of camel feet, the creak of leather saddles, and the impatient grunts of animals that seem less interested in history and more interested in not carrying one more bundle of cinnamon. The horizon blurs with heat, your lips are already dry, and, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes out here without shade or water.so. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, I'd love it if you drop your location and local time in the comments, because I want to know from which corner of the modern world you're tagging along on this ancient road. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tug your scarf tighter against the wind, and the world opens up in beige and gold. Sand stretches endlessly, broken only by the bobbing silhouettes of camels, their long necks weaving like slow pendulums. The caravan leader, a wiry man with sun-leathered skin, raises a hand, and the procession begins its crawl forward. Every sound feels magnified. The rhythmic plod of padded hooves, the clink of bronze fittings, the occasional sneeze of a camel who sounds suspiciously like it's laughing at you. You realize quickly why caravans are massive, strength in numbers. Without 30 or 40 companions, you'd be easy prey to thieves, storms, or just plain loneliness. Historians still argue whether the earliest organized caravans were more like family enterprises or small armies. But either way, safety came with the crowd. Camels carry water skins, bundles of silk, bags of pepper, even cages with live chickens clucking indignantly. Yes, somebody thought dragging poultry across the Taklamakan Desert was a good idea. The desert sun hits differently here. Sharp, not soft, a blade on the skin. Traders smear oil on their faces to keep from blistering. You remember how Romans used olive oil as sunscreen. But here, some travelers lather camel butter, and one rumor mentions crocodile dung paste imported from Egypt. Nobody in the caravan is brave or foolish enough to try it. A boy runs beside his father, waving at you as though you, too, are part of this procession. He's carrying a water gourd almost as big as his head, his bare feet slapping the sand. You notice the long ropes tied to camels' noses, and how each animal seems chained to the rhythm of the one before. Fall asleep in this line, and you'd still end up at the same destination, dragged like a sleepy suitcase. Not a bad travel hack, really. The heat rises. Your vision shimmers. Is that a lake ahead? It looks so real, but everyone ignores it. A mirage, ordinary here, deadly for the gullible. One old man chuckles that newcomers chase them until they collapse. You keep your eyes down, pretending you're an old hand, and then the wind shifts. Sand swirls, first in lazy twists, then in quick stinging slaps. Scarves are pulled across faces. Camels grunt nervously. The caravan tightens formation like a school of fish, bodies shielding one another. A sandstorm brews faster than you'd think, as if the desert's shaking its rug clean of travelers. Someone mutters a prayer to Ahura Mazda, another to Buddha, and a third just curses the wind in 3 languages. You pull your scarf tighter, hearing grains rattle like tiny drumbeats in your ears. When it clears, the desert looks new. Dunes have shifted, trails erased, and for a moment you're unsure if the caravan leader truly knows the way. Historians still argue whether ancient guides relied more on stars, wind, or oral maps etched in memory. Whatever the truth, this man points ahead without hesitation, and the entire line follows. You follow too, mostly because turning back is not an option. By dusk, the air softens. The caravan halts near a dry riverbed, where half-buried stones form the ghost of an old camp. Fires crackle, pots simmer, The smell of lentils and cumin fills the air. Camels kneel with groans that sound like exhausted complaints. You lower yourself on a woven mat, sand still clinging to your clothes, and you feel something strange: relief, camaraderie, even trust in this drifting community. The evening turns quiet except for low conversations. A man beside you tells of traders who once carried glass beads from the Mediterranean all the way to China, beads so cheap at home, yet so precious in far-off lands that they bought horses and spices with them. It seems absurd, like swapping plastic buttons today for a Ferrari, but the Silk Road always turned ordinary things into treasures. Nearby, a pair of young men argue softly about whether the emperor in China truly wears robes entirely woven of gold thread, or whether it's just propaganda. Historians still argue whether those shimmering garments described in chronicles were literal or metaphorical, but either way, it adds a dash of wonder to your evening stew. Someone laughs that even if such robes existed, the emperor probably spilled soy sauce on them at dinner like anyone else. The night sky blossoms, endless and brilliant. Stars crowd together, forming a velvet dome overhead. One traveler points out constellations, tracing shapes of dragons and camels that you can almost believe exist. Another claims he once followed a comet across half a continent, convinced it was guiding him to treasure. He found nothing but debt, but the story entertains the group. The desert has a way of swallowing pride, but leaving good tales behind. That a musician pulls out a lute with missing strings, yet still coaxes a song from it. The melody is haunting, somewhere between a lullaby and a dirge. His voice rises, cracked but steady, singing of ancient kings who thought they could command deserts and died thirsty anyway. You chuckle at the irony. The first desert TED Talk, minus the standing ovation. You lie back, resting your head on your pack. The sand under the mat is still warm, radiating heat into your body. A camel shifts close by, snoring softly. The stars blur as your eyelids grow heavy, and the last thought that drifts through your mind is strangely comforting. You are not alone on this long, perilous road. Others have walked it, sung it, cursed it, and survived, sometimes just barely, but enough to leave their stories in the sand. And so, the first stretch of the Silk Road carries you not just across miles, but across centuries of footsteps, whispers, and shadows, all beginning here in the desert, under the wide and watchful sky. The morning comes quietly, almost as if the desert is embarrassed by how loud it was yesterday. You wake to the sound of camels groaning like retirees getting out of bed, and to the smell of last night's lentils reheated into something suspiciously called breakfast. The sun peeks over the dunes, already promising to roast you alive, but the caravan is on the move before the heat can settle in. The line winds forward, and soon the shimmer of green rises on the horizon. An oasis. You didn't realize how desperate you were for it until you see palm fronds swaying lazily and hear the faint chuckle of water. Travelers straighten their backs, speed their pace. Even the camels perk up, as if they've been pretending to be miserable just to prove a point. Oases are more than watering holes. They are lifelines, places where deals are whispered, stories are traded, and gossip moves faster than caravans ever could. The approach is cautious. Guards scan the tree line because an oasis attracts more than parched travelers. It attracts bandits too. Historians still argue whether certain oases along the Silk Road were neutral grounds protected by custom, or if that's just the romanticized version. Either way, everyone breathes easier once they see no swords glinting among the palms. The first splash of water feels like a miracle. You scoop it in your hands, letting it slip cool between your fingers, and you wonder how many thousands before you felt the same relief. A boy dunks his whole head in, then comes up sputtering while his mother scolds him in rapid-fire syllables. Someone laughs, and the tension dissolves. Shadows stretch beneath date palms. Merchants unpack mats, rolling out silks to air them, spices to tempt, and trinkets to dazzle potential buyers. This isn't just a resting stop. It's a marketplace, a rumor exchange, a living newsletter where caravans compare notes on routes, prices, and dangers. You lean in, listening, because half the road's survival comes from what you hear, not what you see. One old trader tells of a new toll imposed by a minor lord 2 days ahead. Another swears he saw a caravan vanish into a dust storm, its bones now buried in sand. A third insists that in Samarkand, glassware from Rome sells for more than silk. Historians still debate whether Roman glass truly traveled so widely, but the stories here make it sound as if every amphora and goblet had wings. And then, of course, the gossip slips sideways into the absurd. A man with a crooked beard swears a Persian prince has married a Chinese princess, and that together they own a dragon that guards caravans for a price. The others laugh, but you can't help wondering whether, centuries from now, someone will take such tales seriously and call them legends of the Silk Road. Meanwhile, under a shaded canopy, deals spark to life. Two men argue over peppercorns, their voices rising until it sounds like they're at a sports match. A woman silences them by sliding forward a bolt of turquoise silk so fine it gleams even in shadow. Everyone falls quiet, the way you do when something truly rare appears. Quirky tidbit: sometimes silk was literally used as currency, measured in length like coins. One roll could buy a horse, a finer roll, a life. Beyond the trade, the oasis hums with human texture. Children chase each other between date palms. Musicians pluck tunes that sound suspiciously like lullabies you've half heard somewhere. A pot of tea steams beside you, bitter at first sip, but soothing in its warmth. The man who offers it shrugs, saying it's from leaves carried all the way from China. Though whether that's true or just good marketing, you can't say. Not all the shadows here are gentle. On the edge of the gathering, a pair of guards whisper about a caravan robbed 2 nights ago. Some claim the thieves were desert nomads. Others suspect rival merchants staged it to thin the competition. Historians still argue whether banditry was as constant as chronicles suggest, or exaggerated by officials eager to justify more taxes. Either way, you keep your coin pouch close as evening falls. Torches are lit. The oasis transforms into a night garden, alive with flickering flames, laughter, and low voices. You sit beneath a tree, sipping watered wine, and listen to stories wash over you. One tells of Alexander the Great passing through deserts like this, building cities that rose and fell like waves. Another insists that Noah's Ark rests somewhere in the mountains far to the west. Both tales sound unlikely, but then again, you're sitting in a desert sipping imported wine while someone strums a Persian harp. Strange things clearly happen, and amid it all, you catch the subtle pulse of connection. This little patch of green in an endless sea of beige is more than survival. It's civilization in miniature. It's here that silk whispers to spices, pepper argues with porcelain, and languages braid together in ways you'd never expect. The oasis is not just water. It's the Silk Road distilled into one shady circle of palms. You lie back, staring up at fronds swaying against the star-speckled sky, and the thought drifts over you like a breeze. The road may be harsh, but it also has these pockets of reprieve, places where humanity pools before spilling back into the desert. Tomorrow, the sands will swallow your footprints again. Tonight, though, you rest where shadows, laughter, and water meet. The road resumes before dawn, because in the desert you travel when the sun is lazy, not when it's swinging its fiery club overhead. Camels rise like reluctant giants, groaning as though the very idea of work offends them. Bundles are tied down, mats rolled up, and soon the caravan creaks forward again, leaving the oasis behind like a dream you can't quite hold on to. By mid-morning, the line slows as traders begin unpacking. You wonder if they're giving up already, but no, this is business. The Silk Road isn't just endless sand. It's a ribbon of miniature markets, each stop a chance to tempt, barter, and persuade. Today, bolts of fabric emerge from bundles, spices clink in jars, and one unlucky man sneezes so hard at a bag of pepper that half the group jumps in alarm. You kneel beside a merchant who unfurls a roll of silk. Even in the muted light, it shimmers, shifting from green to gold to crimson as the fabric folds and twists. It feels almost alive, cool against your fingers, whispering with every touch. Historians still argue whether silk first reached the Roman Empire through official embassies or through smuggling by rogue merchants. But one thing is certain: anyone who sees this fabric wants it. Nearby, another man opens a chest of spices. The air fills instantly with scents so rich your head swims. Cinnamon sharp and sweet, nutmeg warm and musky, pepper biting at your nose until you sneeze again. You joke that this caravan might be history's first essential oils subscription box, minus the influencer discount code. A few travelers chuckle, though one man looks genuinely intrigued at the idea of selling smells as cures. The haggling begins. Words overlap in Greek, Persian, Sogdian, Chinese, and a dozen dialects you can't identify. Fingers jab at cloth, coins clink, voices rise and fall in mock outrage, followed by sudden bursts of laughter when both sides finally pretend to be satisfied. You notice how body language does half the work: raised brows, dramatic sighs, exaggerated shrugs. It's part theater, part survival, and entirely addictive to watch. One quirky tidbit slips into conversation. Merchants sometimes chewed peppercorns before bargaining, so their fiery breath made them seem angrier and harder to refuse. You glance at the pepper seller now and wonder if his shouting is enhanced by spice or just his natural personality. Either way, he wins most of his deals. Among the fabrics and spices are curiosities. Beads of lapis lazuli glow like fragments of midnight. Tiny bronze mirrors catch the sunlight, flashing signals across the sand. A Persian trader boasts of glass cups from far-off Rome, so delicate they shatter if you look at them wrong. Someone else rolls out felt carpets embroidered with knots so intricate you can lose yourself staring. It's as though the world's attic has been unpacked here in the middle of nowhere. A boy wanders past clutching a small clay figurine, a squat little camel with comically bulging eyes. His father laughs and explains it's a charm, said to keep real camels from wandering at night. Historians still argue whether such trinkets were bought out of true belief or just as souvenirs for passing caravans. But either way, you can't deny its charm. You almost want one for your desk at home. Trade isn't the only drama unfolding. A scholar with ink-stained fingers sits cross-legged, unrolling scrolls covered in neat characters. He explains that contracts must be written, stamped, and sometimes duplicated, because trust is a rare commodity here. You marvel at the fact that paperwork is as old as humanity's urge to cheat. Even on this ancient road, bureaucracy is alive and well, its scrolls fluttering like smug little flags of civilization. As the sun climbs, trade winds down. Deals are sealed, bundles repacked, and camels reluctantly loaded again. You catch the caravan leader tucking away a pouch heavier than before, his face unreadable. Wealth here doesn't glitter. It groans under straps and sweats on the backs of animals. Yet not every exchange involves coins. A woman offers a jar of saffron in return for protection on the next stretch of road. Another man trades a silver buckle for medical herbs to soothe his camel's infected leg. Value shifts with need, as flexible as the road itself. Historians still argue whether this fluid barter system kept cultures tolerant of one another, or whether it just made everyone perpetually suspicious of getting a bad deal. By late afternoon, the camp stirs with the weariness of too much commerce. Some merchants are triumphant, others bitter, but everyone seems lighter in spirit, even if lighter in goods. Trade may be exhausting, but it carries its own kind of energy, an excitement that your possessions have moved on, your stories have spread, and your name might be muttered in some far-off marketplace as the caravan gathers itself and trudges on. You glance back at the dusty clearing now scattered with footprints, fragments of cloth, and the faint smell of spice lingering in the heat. It feels less like a transaction zone and more like a stage, one where countless performers have entered, shouted, bargained, and exited over centuries. The echoes remain, layered one upon another, whispering that the Silk Road is not a single journey but an ongoing play, forever rehearsed by new travelers. Night creeps up quickly. The horizon darkens, stars blink awake, and the caravan moves silently, shadows stretched long behind swaying camels. You settle into the rhythm again, the crunch of sand underfoot, the low hum of voices ahead, the steady plod of hooves. Around you, bundles of silk rustle softly, jars of spice clink faintly, and the smell of pepper still tickles your nose. Somewhere between the weight of fabric, the bite of spice, and the laughter of haggling, you realize you're not just passing through history. You're wrapped in it, sneezing in it, and maybe even smelling faintly of cinnamon. You wake to the sound of someone shouting, a sharp cry that makes the camels flinch and sends a ripple of unease through the caravan. The desert around you is still half asleep, the horizon glowing faintly like an ember, but already the tension is real. Today's stretch is not about oases or lively bartering. Today is about survival. The road ahead plunges into dunes, rolling, endless, and treacherous. The air is dry enough that your lips crack just by breathing. A caravan elder mutters, "The desert eats the careless," and though he smiles as if joking, his eyes stay fixed on the dunes. Historians still argue whether traders preferred longer but safer routes around deserts, or dared to cut across for speed. Either way, here you are, trudging straight into golden danger. The sand shifts with every step. Camels grunt, adjusting awkwardly as their padded feet sink deep. A man slips, curses in a language you don't know, and climbs back up the dune on all fours. The heat builds so fast it feels like someone turned the sky into an oven lid. You cover your head, but sweat pours down anyway, and every sip from your water skin feels inadequate. And then, the mirages begin again. At first, it's a ripple, light dancing like water just out of reach. Then whole illusions rise. Shimmering lakes, clusters of green trees, even what looks like a stone tower in the distance. The boy who once dunked his head at the oasis stares wide-eyed, tugging at his father's sleeve. The father shakes his head grimly and keeps walking. You squint hard, knowing the desert is toying with you, but it's difficult not to believe what you see. Someone mutters that bandits use mirages as allies. They hide behind dunes, waiting for desperate travelers to chase false lakes. The idea sends a chill along your spine, though the sun does its best to burn it away. A guard shifts nervously, hand on his sword. Historians still argue whether banditry was organized, like desert guilds of thieves, or scattered families striking when luck allowed. Either way, you quicken your pace, glancing left and right. By midday, the storm arrives. Not rain, but wind, a sudden whip that hurls sand in sheets. Scarves fly up, eyes clamp shut, and camels moan like low trumpets. You feel grains pepper your skin, stinging sharp as needles. Visibility collapses to almost nothing, the world reduced to beige chaos. The caravan bunches together, bodies shielding one another, and the leader shouts instructions swallowed instantly by the gale that it lasts minutes or hours, you can't tell. Time folds inside the storm. All you know is grit in your teeth, aching muscles holding onto the nearest rope, and the uncanny sense that the desert is laughing. Finally, just as suddenly as it rose, the storm weakens. Sand settles. Shapes emerge again. Camels, people, the faint line of the caravan. When the dust clears fully, something is missing. 2 men and a camel never made it back into the line. Shouts rise. Desperate calls echo across dunes, but silence answers. The leader lowers his head. Searching is impossible. The storm has rearranged the desert. What was once a track is now a new skin of sand. Historians still argue how many lives the Silk Road truly claimed. The records are vague, but moments like this make the losses painfully real. You trudge on, quieter now, the mood heavy. The desert has claimed its tax, BY evening. The air cools, and the caravan reaches a hollow where the dunes bow inward, forming a natural shelter. Fires spark, pots clatter, the ordinary rhythm of survival resumes, because on this road, grief is folded into routine. Someone begins telling a story, not of loss, but of triumph, of a caravan that once fended off 40 bandits using only slingshots and sheer stubbornness. Another jokes that camels can spit so accurately they once drove off thieves without human help. It's ridiculous, but laughter bubbles up, a release of fear that a quirky tidbit floats around the fire. Some merchants train their camels to kneel on command during raids, using their bodies as living barricades. You glance at the animals now, snoring loudly, jaws grinding in their strange sideways chew, and try to imagine them as brave defenders. Honestly, they look more likely to defend you by sitting down and refusing to move as stars prick the sky. The danger of the day recedes into memory. The wind softens, the air cools, and you stretch out on the sand, strangely grateful for solid ground after all that shifting chaos. Above you, constellations shimmer, the same ones ancient guides used to navigate when dunes erased the path. A traveler points at Orion, another at the Great Bear, and you wonder if anyone has ever mapped the sky as carefully as they've mapped the earth. Lying there, you realize the Silk Road isn't just a highway of goods. It's a tightrope strung over danger, where every step is a gamble, and every survivor earns the right to tell a story. And though fear lingers like dust in your mouth, so does awe, because you are still here, still walking, still listening to the desert's harsh music. The desert finally releases you into night, and by dawn the air feels almost merciful. The caravan pushes onward until the horizon shifts again, this time not into mirages or dunes, but into the glow of firelight scattered across a valley. You smell it before you see it. Smoke, roasting meat, and the faint spice of saffron curling on the breeze. A Persian night market waits ahead, a jewel strung on the Silk Road, and you can feel the pull like gravity as you step into the alleys. The world explodes with color and sound. Lanterns dangle overhead, painted with swirling reds and blues, glowing like bottled sunsets. Vendors shout in overlapping voices, hawking goods with the persistence of modern telemarketers, but much more charm. The crowd presses close. Merchants, beggars, musicians, thieves, and the night feels alive in a way the desert never could. The first stall you pass offers candied nuts glistening with honey. You taste one, and it crunches between your teeth, sweet enough to sting your tongue. Next, a tray of roasted lambs sprinkled with cumin. The aroma is so strong it makes your stomach growl despite the lentil stew you just had hours ago. Food here is not just survival. It's theater, a performance to draw coins from weary travelers that a storyteller commands a circle, his voice rising above the din. He spins a tale of Shahnameh heroes, warriors with swords as tall as palm trees, who ride into battle against demons with glowing eyes. The children in the audience gape, spellbound, while adults roll theirs, having heard this tale 100 times. Still, coins jingle into his bowl. Historians still argue whether these night storytellers were mostly entertainers or unofficial newsmen spreading information. Either way, you lean in, letting the rhythm of his words coat you like honey. Beyond him, musicians pluck strings and beat drums. A woman dances, her bracelets chiming, her veil catching lantern light like flame. For a moment, the market feels timeless, music weaving through alleys, laughter rising like incense, every sense drenched in stimulation. Then you notice the pickpockets, moving with the grace of cats. One boy darts close, fingers brushing a merchant's pouch, but the merchant whirls around, smacking him on the ear with the speed of someone who's been robbed before. The boy yelps, vanishes into the crowd, and the game continues. You find yourself drawn to a stall lined with fabrics, silks, and cottons dyed so vividly, it's like staring at bottled rainbows. The merchant claims the deep indigo comes from India, the fiery crimson from cochineal insects crushed in far-off lands. A quirky tidbit: some dyes were so expensive that a single tunic could equal a year's wages. You run your hand across the fabric, imagining emperors strutting in these colors, and wonder how many kings' egos were just clever dye jobs. Nearby, a scribe sits cross-legged, offering to write letters in elegant Persian script. He claims he can pen words so beautiful that even insults will sound like compliments. You're tempted to hire him just to draft a complaint to your camel. Historians still argue whether such scribes doubled as spies, sending copies of travelers' letters to rulers. The suspicion lingers in his watchful eyes as he sharpens his reed pen. The crowd thickens as night deepens. You hear half a dozen languages, Greek mixing with Aramaic, Chinese tones sliding into Turkic, all woven together in a tapestry of trade. The chaos is mesmerizing, and yet, beneath it, you sense order. Everyone knows the rules. Haggle hard, guard your purse, laugh when cheated, and move on. The night market is less about fairness and more about the performance of exchange. A T1 stall. A man displays jars of rose water, claiming it can cure headaches, clean wounds, and attract lovers. Another advertises charms made from wolf teeth, said to keep nightmares away. A woman beside you whispers that the wolf teeth are really just goat bones carved to shape, but she buys one anyway. You think about how little has changed. Snake oil salesman, ancient edition. The air thickens with smoke as cooks fan flames beneath skewers. You bite into one, juicy, spiced with coriander and onion, and nearly burn your tongue. A stranger laughs at your reaction, offers you watered wine, and toasts to safe travels. For a brief moment, everyone feels like family here, tied not by blood but by the shared weariness of the road. Still, shadows linger. You overhear two men in a corner whispering about caravans ambushed near Bactria, their goods vanishing into the night. The fear is real even here, wrapped in music and light. Historians still argue whether markets like this were truly safe havens or just tempting targets for thieves. You clutch your pouch a little tighter, even as your eyes wander toward another row of glittering stalls. The night market stretches until it feels endless, a labyrinth of smells, sounds, and colors. Eventually, exhaustion creeps in. The crowd thins, stalls shudder, lanterns dim. Only the musicians linger, strumming softer tunes now. songs meant not for dancing, but for dreaming. You find a quiet spot by a fountain, where water splashes gently, and lean back against warm stone. The desert seems impossibly far away here, as though you've stepped into another world. A world where silk whispers, spices bite, and stories swirl like smoke under lantern light. You close your eyes, letting the hum of the market lull you. Tomorrow will bring new dangers, new stretches of road. But tonight belongs to shadows, music, and the sweet burn of cumin on your tongue. By morning, the last notes of the Persian market have faded, and you find yourself back on the open road. Sand crunches under your sandals, the air dry as parchment, but soon, almost miraculously, the horizon shimmers with green. An oasis spreads before you, fringed with palms that sway like lazy dancers. The sight is so relieving that you nearly want to kiss the nearest date tree, though frankly that would be awkward for everyone watching. The caravan halts, camels groaning in gratitude as they're unburdened. Water glitters in the basin, and you hear it before you reach it. The slosh of buckets, the soft murmur of animals drinking. For weary travelers, this oasis feels like a luxury spa, minus the cucumber eye masks and whale music. Here, the Silk Road doesn't just survive, it thrives, because merchants from every direction converge on this one fertile patch of earth. You notice Greek traders with beards trimmed like marble statues, gesturing broadly as if every deal is a theater performance. Their amphorae gleam, filled with wine said to be strong enough to stun a horse. Beside them stand Indian merchants, their cloth bundles spilling over with cotton so fine it feels like woven clouds. Somewhere between the two, a handful of locals juggle both tongues, haggling with the fluency of people who have grown up translating survival into 2 or 3 languages. The smells are dizzying: olive oil from Greece, pepper from India, incense smoldering nearby, dates drying on reed mats. It's like walking into the world's most chaotic grocery aisle. Only everyone here has a camel parked outside. You can't help but linger at a Greek stall, where one man pours dark red wine into clay cups. It tastes heavy, almost smoky, though he insists it's perfect for health. A quirky tidbit: physicians in the ancient Mediterranean genuinely recommended wine mixed with herbs as medicine. Basically, the original drink plenty of fluids. You sip and wonder whether your health has improved or your balance has worsened. The Indian stalls. The chatter is lighter. One merchant unrolls fabrics dyed in hues that put rainbows to shame. He swears the brilliant blues come from indigo plants, and he explains how entire villages back home are dedicated to dyeing cloth. Historians still argue whether indigo truly reached Western oases this early, or if traders exaggerated their wares to raise prices. Either way, your fingers itch to touch the cloth, and you nearly fumble your purse when he winks knowingly. The oasis isn't only about goods, it's about gossip. As you sit under the palms, chewing dates so sticky they glue your teeth together, you overhear rumors. A Greek whispers that Rome has banned certain silk imports because senators fear the fabric makes men weak. An Indian merchant scoffs, countering that in his homeland, silk is draped on warriors going to war. Who's right? You shrug, realizing it's less about truth and more about pride, plus maybe a little fashion snobbery. Nearby, a makeshift bathhouse has been set up. Travelers strip down to rinse the grit of the desert from their skin. One man claims the spring here is sacred, blessed by a forgotten goddess. Another swears the water contains minerals that keep one youthful. You splash some on your face, wait a moment, and check for wrinkles. Sadly, no miracle, but at least the dust is gone. As night approaches, the oasis transforms. Fires crackle, and the mingling of cultures becomes a performance in itself. Greek flutes play, joined unexpectedly by Indian drums, creating a rhythm so catchy you tap your foot against the sand. A poet recites verses in Persian, and though half the crowd doesn't understand the words, the cadence is enough to mesmerize. Historians still argue whether such cross-cultural performances were spontaneous or staged by local rulers to keep trade flowing. You decide, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're entertained. There's laughter, there's bargaining, and occasionally there's shouting. A Greek trader claims his olive oil can last for decades. An Indian merchant retorts that his spices could mask the flavor of rancid oil anyway. The debate escalates until a passerby jokes that both should just open a restaurant together. For a brief moment, you picture an ancient Silk Road fusion diner, grape leaves stuffed with curried rice, drizzled in olive oil, and washed down with peppered wine. Honestly, you try it. In the background, you notice a small shrine, little more than a stone platform stacked with offerings. A clay figurine sits at its center, half worn away by time. Some bow, others scoff, but all toss something: dates, a coin, even a broken sandal strap. A quirky tidbit: archaeologists have actually uncovered shrines like these near Caravan Oases, suggesting that even while trading goods, people traded prayers, hedging bets against fate. That as the firelight glows, you can't help but admire how seamlessly different worlds collide here. Greek philosophy books might be tucked next to Indian cotton, Persian poetry echoing alongside foreign songs. The Oasis is not just a resting point. It's a living classroom, messy and loud, but richer than any scroll. And you, somewhere between sips of questionable wine and bites of sweet dates, realize you're part of the experiment too. Later, as you lie on a mat beneath the palms, the stars crowd the sky. You listen to camels snorting, men laughing, music drifting. The world feels stitched together by threads invisible but undeniable, pulled tight across deserts and mountains, binding people who otherwise might never have met. Tomorrow the road will call again, but tonight the Oasis hums with stories and flavors that remind you trade isn't only about survival. It's about curiosity, indulgence, and the sheer joy of finding the strange nestled beside the familiar. When dawn spills across the desert, pale and gold, you roll up your mat and follow the caravan back into motion. The road hums with anticipation, because today you reach a crossroads where Persian and Chinese envoys meet. Two powers so different in language, dress, and cuisine, yet bound by the same irresistible lure of silk. You arrive at a dusty clearing marked not by stone monuments, but by the bustle of tents. Envoys stand tall in embroidered robes, their attendants fanning them as if the desert sun personally insulted them. The Persian officials wear flowing garments, their beards oiled into obedient curls. Across from them, the Chinese envoys are crisp in layered silks that shimmer with every movement, as though they carry dawn on their shoulders. Between them lies a table of goods, silk bundles, jars of spices, coins gleaming in the light. You stand just close enough to eavesdrop, though you pretend to adjust a camel's harness. The negotiation begins, and it's less shouting than you expected. Voices are measured, smiles painted on, but the air feels taut, like a bowstring about to snap. One envoy extols the purity of Persian silver coins. The other counters with the unrivaled perfection of Chinese silk. Both know the world desires what they offer, and both want to walk away believing they've outsmarted the other. The mainstream historical fact anchors this scene. Silk was so valuable to Rome and Persia that both states guarded access fiercely. Chinese envoys didn't reveal how silk was made. They let others imagine it grew from trees or flowed from secret springs. You almost laugh, picturing senators sending gardeners to water silk bushes that never existed. Nearby, translators scramble to keep pace. Their voices weave a bridge between languages, though sometimes they stumble. You catch a moment where a Chinese phrase about endless supply is translated as supplies are ending. Suddenly, everyone frowns, and you wonder how many wars in history have started because someone needed a better dictionary. Behind the tents, soldiers from both sides linger, armor glinting, hands resting too casually on spear shafts. Their presence is a reminder. Diplomacy here is a performance balanced on the edge of steel. Historians still argue whether these envoy meetings truly avoided conflict, or if they merely postponed battles waiting to flare again. You glance at the soldiers' cold stares and decide the second theory sounds uncomfortably believable. As the talks stretch on, the atmosphere swells with small dramas. A Persian servant trips, spilling a jug of pomegranate juice across the sand. Gasps ripple through the tent, but a Chinese envoy chuckles softly, easing the tension. The joke lands, laughter follows, and for a fleeting moment, you see diplomacy working not through treaties, but through shared humanity. The universal relief of realizing that clumsiness is funny, no matter what empire you're from. Later, gifts are exchanged. The Persians present lapis lazuli, a stone so blue it seems stolen from the sky. The Chinese offer bolts of silk, so light you're sure they'd float away if untied. A quirky tidbit: there are tales of Persian rulers stitching silk into tents so enormous they could shade entire processions, as if conquering armies required luxury camping gear. The night falls, and both camps retreat to their fires. You find yourself seated between them, caught in the middle of gossip. A Persian soldier boasts that their horses, swift and sturdy, can outlast any eastern steed. A Chinese rider counters that their mounts are small but fierce, quick enough to dash across mountains. The debate escalates until someone suggests a race. You secretly hope they'll do it. Ancient diplomatic summits turning into impromptu horse derbies sounds far more entertaining than endless negotiations. Food, too, becomes a bargaining chip. The Persians bring lamb stews heavy with herbs, while the Chinese prepare dumplings stuffed with minced meat. You get dragged into the tasting, and your taste buds nearly throw a party. Historians still argue whether dumplings themselves spread westward from these very encounters, or whether the idea of stuffed dough with delicious things was simply invented independently. You don't care. Chewy dumplings in the desert taste like civilization itself. That be why the second evening, the envoys agree, or at least they pretend to. Coins are weighed, silk bolts are tallied, and handshakes, or their ancient equivalents, seal the exchange. You realize the Silk Road isn't only a highway of goods. It's a stage where empires practice both pride and compromise, playing tug-of-war over fabric and spices while pretending not to notice the soldiers sharpening spears in the shadows. As you settle to sleep, the murmurs of two languages drift together in the night air. The negotiations may have ended, but you can still sense the tension humming like a string stretched tight, vibrating with the weight of centuries to come. You wonder, was this moment a true bridge between East and West, or just another fragile truce stitched with silk? The answer drifts away before you can catch it, leaving only the steady rhythm of your breath against the desert hush. The caravan moves again, dust clouds curling behind hooves and sandals, and by afternoon you arrive at a place that feels more alive than any desert crossing so far. A sprawling bazaar where caravans from every direction pour in. This is no sleepy cluster of tents. It's a thunderstorm of commerce. You hear it before you see it. A constant hum of bargaining voices, the clink of coins, the squeal of animals being tugged too quickly through narrow lanes. You squeeze into the crowd and are swallowed by a river of humanity. To your left, Indian traders spread out peppercorns and cinnamon, their spices making the air itself feel warmer, spicier. To your right, Central Asian nomads unload felt rugs so thick you imagine you could sleep on them forever. The Persians have stalls stacked with turquoise, and from the north come furs so soft your fingers nearly betray you by stroking a vendor's sample. Over it all drifts the faint sweetness of dried apricots, because apparently, even in antiquity, someone thought road trip snacks were essential. You shuffle forward, weaving between a donkey with pots clanging against its flanks and a shouting vendor who insists his saffron is worth its weight in gold. He may not be exaggerating. A mainstream historical fact, saffron truly was one of the most expensive goods traded along the Silk Road, valued both for flavor and for dyeing robes the color of fire. Some ancient texts mention it being worth more, ounce for ounce, than precious metals. You make a mental note never to spill saffron in your kitchen. It would be like dropping loose change, only far more tragic. Here, the air itself feels intoxicating. Every few steps the smell changes. Smoky cumin, tangy fermented dairy, earthy hides. You half expect to bump into a modern food critic scribbling notes for a travel column. And then comes the quirky tidbit. A man waves you over to inspect what he claims is dragon bone powder, ground from massive fossils dug out of the desert cliffs. Locals swear it cures fever, strengthens bones, maybe even makes you irresistible. You sniff the powder, it smells vaguely like chalk, and politely decline, deciding that romance by fossil isn't really your style. The market is chaos, yet strangely organized. Each group of traders seems to know exactly where to go. Indian merchants cluster together, their fabrics forming a rainbow tint of color. Nomads spread wares on rugs, shouting prices in languages half the crowd doesn't understand. Somehow, deals still happen. Gold changes hands. Bolts of silk vanish into wagons, and the rhythm of trade beats like a drum. Historians still argue whether markets like this were run under strict civic oversight. Did local governors set prices, enforce weights, and collect taxes? Or did it function more like a gigantic free-for-all, regulated only by haggling and mutual trust? Walking through the swirl of shouting and laughter, you lean toward the second option that a juggler catches your eye. Yes, in the middle of this market, someone's tossing clay balls and knives into the air, his motions smooth enough to distract even the grumpiest camel driver. Street performers were no rarity. Trade brought not just goods, but entertainment. Coins tossed at his feet glimmer alongside the dust. You pause, clap softly, then move on before he accidentally decides you'd make a fine volunteer for the knife part of his routine. You drift deeper and discover an area dedicated entirely to animals. Horses stamp and snort, their eyes flashing as merchants argue about bloodlines. Dogs bark, parrots squawk, and in one pen you see something that makes you blink twice. Peacocks. Their tails shimmer like jeweled fans, utterly out of place in this dusty landscape. But trade brought even exotic birds across mountains. Imagine stumbling upon a peacock in Central Asia. It would feel like spotting a celebrity in a supermarket. Amid the chatter, you hear whispers of politics. Travelers complain about bandits along a northern route, while others mutter about tolls being raised by a governor eager to fill his coffers. You realize markets weren't just places to buy things, they were news hubs. Gossip here could travel faster than any horse. By the time you sip a bowl of fermented mare's milk, sour, frothy, and not at all what you expected, you know more about border disputes and upcoming festivals than a local newspaper might tell you centuries later. The sun dips lower and lanterns flicker alive. Night turns the market into something dreamlike. Fires glow beneath pots, smoke curling upward like incense. Children chase each other between stalls. Merchants shout prices louder, and music swells, a two-stringed fiddle somewhere, a hand drum keeping time. You catch yourself swaying slightly, lulled by the rhythm a T1 stall. A toothless old woman sells charms woven from reed and string. She swears each one wards off a specific misfortune: scorpion stings, broken carts, even heartbreak. You almost buy one, thinking it might be worth testing against tomorrow's camel ride. And there's the thing. You realize these tiny, seemingly silly purchases carried trade just as much as silk and silver did. People didn't just crave riches. They wanted protection, laughter, and maybe a cure for loneliness. As the crowd thins, you wander toward the edge of the bazaar. There, under a canopy of stars, two caravans prepare to depart in opposite directions, one east, one west. You watch them load goods: bolts of silk, jars of saffron, rugs, dried fruit, and, yes, at least one peacock cage creaking unsteadily onto a cart. You realize you've been standing in a funnel where the world pours together, only to spill outward again into endless roads. And just before sleep takes you, you smile at the absurdity. Somewhere far away, a Roman noble might soon be seasoning his stew with Indian peppercorns, while a Chinese scholar scribbles notes by the light of an oil lamp fueled with Persian sesame. All because of this market, where you now curl up in a blanket, the smell of saffron still clinging to your clothes, as the desert night hushes the noise into a gentle, drowsy hum. The bazaar fades behind you, its lanterns shrinking to pinpricks in the desert night, and soon you're once again swallowed by the long road. This time the path carries you into mountain passes where winds cut sharp and cold, reminding you that the Silk Road wasn't just sunburn and sandstorms. Up here, the stars feel close enough to pluck from the sky, but the ground beneath your feet is rough, unforgiving. Stone chips crunch under your sandals as you trudge along, and your breath fogs in the chill. The caravan slows. Wagons creak as oxen struggle uphill. Your nose stings with the metallic bite of thin air, and every word you speak comes out in a puff of white. You'd laugh about making instant smoke signals with your lungs, but no one else seems in the mood. The joke stays in your head. Mountains make you realize how fragile travel really is. A single misstep on these narrow ledges, and you could tumble into a ravine so deep you'd never even get the courtesy of a dramatic echo. A mainstream historical fact: mountain routes like these were notoriously dangerous, but also unavoidable, especially along corridors like the Pamir Mountains. These high roof of the world passes linked Central Asia to China, and without them, the Silk Road would have been a dead end. Traders risked frostbite, altitude sickness, avalanches, all just to keep goods moving. Imagine Amazon Prime offering that kind of delivery guaranteed. As you press on, you notice shrines tucked into rock alcoves. Each one is tiny: a candle stub, a carved figurine, sometimes a bundle of incense sticks long since burned to ash. Quirky detail here: many travelers carried small charms against mountain spirits. Some locals believed the peaks themselves were alive, moody giants who could hurl storms if offended. People left offerings of bread or even animal hair, hoping the mountain gods would let them pass. You consider tossing your last apricot pit into one of the shrines, though knowing your luck, the mountain would take it as an insult and roll a boulder your way. The caravan halts at a narrow gorge where walls rise like stone towers. Echoes bounce back every time someone coughs or curses. The path is so tight that two wagons can't pass side by side. You squeeze along, trying not to think about the fact that the ledge is just wide enough for your boots. Down below, the river foams white, roaring like it has a personal grudge against you. Historians still argue whether organized states maintained these high passes with patrols and outposts, or whether traders were mostly on their own. Some evidence suggests Chinese and Persian rulers tried to fortify key choke points. But honestly, standing here with your toes curling over the edge, You see no sign of cavalry galloping in to save you if things went wrong. The rocks themselves feel like the only police around up by dusk. The caravan finds a flat spot where a sheer cliff shelters you from the worst of the wind. Fires spark to life, their smoke whipped quickly upward. Tonight's dinner is simple, boiled millet with dried meat. You chew dutifully, though your mind wanders to that market feast of saffron and fruit. Your teeth grind at a particularly tough piece of jerky, and you can't help thinking it's one argument against the romantic glamour of trade. Still, even here, stories unfold. A fellow traveler shares a tale of a caravan swallowed whole by an avalanche, the snow burying silk bales and camels alike. Another swears he saw giant footprints in a pass ahead, bigger than any man's. He calls it the mark of a yeti. You roll your eyes, but secretly glance at the shadows beyond the fire, half hoping you don't hear crunching snow that isn't your own. The night deepens. The wind moans through cracks in the rocks, sounding almost like voices, soft, mournful, ancient. You pull your cloak tighter and lie down, trying to ignore the thought that the mountain is whispering. Maybe it's not so different from the way people today hear strange noises in hotel hallways at midnight and convince themselves it's haunted. Human brains love turning wind into ghosts. When morning comes, the sky is brilliantly clear, blue so sharp it hurts your eyes. The peaks glow pink with sunrise, snow catching fire for a moment before fading to blinding white. You trudge onward, boots slipping on ice. The caravan ropes animals together to keep them from straying. One slip, and everyone could go tumbling like dominoes. The sound of bells tied to the lead camel echoes, strangely cheerful against the emptiness. Halfway through the day, you pass a line of prayer flags fluttering in the wind, their colors faded but still vivid enough to mark the path. You pause and imagine all the hands that tied them there. Pilgrims, monks, desperate traders hoping for safe passage. Each scrap of cloth flutters like a message to the sky. Maybe someone thousands of years ago prayed for something as simple as warmer boots or fewer blisters. Just like you, as the descent begins, relief mingles with awe. Valleys open below, dotted with green specks of villages. Smoke curls upward, promising food and shelter. But you know this is just one of many mountain crossings, and each has its own perils. Looking back at the jagged spine of rock, you marvel that fragile lines of trade survived at all. Without roads, without GPS, without energy bars or fleece jackets. Just stubborn people hauling goods across peaks that look like they want nothing more than to kill you. Still, as you step into the valley and smell wood smoke and hear distant laughter, you realize something important. Survival itself was part of the trade. Every bundle of silk, every pouch of saffron, every bolt of wool carried not just value but proof that someone made it through alive. And you, yawning in the thinning air, have earned another night of sleep tucked between the shadows of mountains that guard the road like ancient sentinels. The valley floor greets you with a wash of color. Green terraces carved into the slopes, orchards dotted with apricots, and smoke drifting lazily from mud brick chimneys. After the harsh mountain cold, the sight feels like stumbling into a painting someone left lying open in the sun. Your shoulders loosen. Your lungs, still adjusting to the thicker air, fill gratefully, as though they've been handed an extra lung as a bonus prize. The caravan heads toward a settlement hugging the river, its houses stacked like clay cubes, each roof doubling as the neighbor's courtyard. Children scamper along the walls, chasing each other with shrieks that echo against the cliffs. A woman leans from a balcony to toss grain to her chickens, the birds scattering like animated punctuation marks. You feel eyes on you, curious, measuring, a little suspicious. After all, you and your fellow traders are outsiders, dragging bundles of silk and jars of spices through their quiet world, 0.1 mainstream fact. Towns like these often grew wealthy simply by existing along the Silk Road. They didn't have to produce silk or invent exotic dyes. They just had to provide safe rest, stables, and food. Merchants needed lodgings, animals needed fodder, and taxes needed collecting. Soon, a modest farming village could turn into a buzzing caravanserai hub. Imagine running a roadside motel today and suddenly having to host guests from Rome, India, and China all in the same week. Your front desk clerk would either faint or demand a raise. Your group is led to a caravanserai, its thick walls closing behind you like a fortress. Inside, the air smells of hay, sweat, and simmering stew. The innkeeper, a wiry man with a beard that seems to have a personality of its own, rattles off fees for lodging and fodder. You half expect him to offer a loyalty punch card, stay 10 nights, get your 11th free. But instead he just waves you toward a corner room. The space is simple, straw mats, a clay lamp, and walls etched with graffiti from earlier travelers. Some are prayers, others crude drawings of camels that look more like angry loaves of bread. One inscription catches your eye. Safe passage granted, 7th year of the ox. The thought that someone carved that centuries ago is grounding, like shaking hands across time. Quirky tidbit. Many caravanserais employed professional storytellers who would entertain guests with tales during dinner. Tonight, as bowls of lentil stew and flatbread are passed around, a lanky man steps into the courtyard with a drum. He spins stories of heroes who tricked demons, of rivers that change course overnight, of caravans lost and rediscovered. His hands and voice weave together until even the camels seem to stop chewing and listen. You can't help grinning. It's basically the ancient Netflix binge session, but with more lentils. Later, as the stars come out, conversations flow more freely. Traders swap gossip about distant kings and shifting borders. Someone claims a new emperor in China has doubled the patrols on the Great Wall. Someone else swears Rome is cracking under civil wars. Historians still argue whether news like this was accurate intelligence or exaggerated rumor, but either way, it shows how the Silk Road wasn't just a highway for goods. It was also the internet of its time, passing along half-truths, tall tales, and occasional kernels of fact. You sip from a clay cup of sour wine, wincing at its sharpness. Your fellow travelers laugh, assuring you it improves after the 3rd cup. You're unconvinced, but it does make the firelight blur into something softer, friendlier. Soon the courtyard buzzes with laughter, trading boasts and complaints in a jumble of tongues. You recognize only fragments, but the rhythm of human voices is enough to carry you as night deepens. You step outside the walls for air. The village glows under the moon, orchards casting patterned shadows. A dog barks, then quiets. Beyond the fields, the mountains loom again, black outlines against the stars. You realize that while the caravanserai provides shelter, the wild world is never far. One wrong spark of politics, or weather, or simple human greed, and safety can vanish. But for tonight, wrapped in the hum of voices and the smell of bread baking for tomorrow, you're content. Morning arrives with the crow of roosters and the clatter of hooves. The inn bustles, pack animals are loaded, debts are argued over, and children peer at bolts of silk as though they were magical. You shoulder your pack and feel the pull of the road again. The innkeeper hands you a token of baked clay stamped with a symbol. He claims it will grant smoother passage at the next checkpoint. You doubt its official currency. More likely it's his cousin's scam, but you tuck it into your pouch anyway. After all, stranger things than clay tokens have changed history. As the caravan rolls out, villagers wave from terraces, their voices drifting down like a farewell song. You realize the Silk Road isn't just camels and deserts and emperors. It's also the countless small lives that shape the road's heartbeat. Children laughing in the dust, innkeepers haggling, storytellers drumming out legends that will never make it into textbooks. Without them, the road would be a skeleton of stones. With them, it breathes. You glance back once more, the clay walls glowing orange in the dawn. Then you turn forward, toward another stretch of shadow and promise. The road, like the night, is endless, but somehow, each stop makes it worth continuing. The caravan presses on, winding into another stretch of barren land. The orchards fade behind you, and soon the greenery seems like a dream you invented to stay sane. In its place comes a sea of sand and silence. The road narrows to a faint track etched by centuries of hooves and boots. Each step feels both heavy and fragile, as if you're balancing on history's tightrope that it first. The desert greets you with deceptive calm. The dunes curve like frozen waves, gleaming gold under the sun. You squint and think, beautiful, until the heat begins pressing on your skull like a blacksmith's hammer. The air vibrates, quivering with mirages, patches of shimmering water that vanish the moment you move closer. The human brain, it turns out, is spectacularly gullible when thirst takes the wheel. You mutter under your breath, "If I see one more fake oasis, I'm suing the desert," though you suspect the desert's legal department is just tumbleweed. Historical fact: merchants traveling the Silk Road often faced weeks in terrain exactly like this, moving between oases strung out like fragile pearls. Without camels, it would have been impossible. Their humps don't actually store water, that's fat, but camels can drink up to 40 gallons in one go, then plod across sand for days without collapsing. You eye your caravan's camels with grudging admiration. They look unimpressed, as if they've heard enough compliments for several lifetimes. The desert silence is interrupted only by the crunch of hooves and the occasional grunt from an animal. At night, when the wind rises, the sand whispers like a restless crowd. Some travelers swear the dunes themselves speak, carrying voices of those who never made it across. A quirky tidbit whispers its way into your mind. Ancient guides sometimes claim to hear bells in the distance, luring them off the safe route. Later scholars suggested it was just the sound of sand grains colliding in the wind, singing sand, a real phenomenon. You can't decide whether that's fascinating or deeply unsettling. Maybe both. One evening, you huddle with the group around a tiny fire, flames barely surviving the gusts. Shadows lean long across the sand. Someone shares dried figs, another passes a water skin that feels too light. Conversation turns grim. A story of an entire caravan swallowed by a sandstorm, camels and men buried alive, their goods resurfacing years later in a shifting dune. Historians still argue whether these tales are exaggerated folklore or echoes of real disasters. Either way, the moral is clear. The desert doesn't care about your survival plans. Sleep here is a strange thing. You lie beneath an open sky painted with more stars than you can comprehend. The Milky Way stretches like a river of spilled flour, dazzling yet indifferent. You wrap your cloak tight, the heat gone the moment the sun slips. It's hard to relax when you know a single gust could smother your fire and erase your path. Still, exhaustion wins. You drift, half dreaming, half listening to the dunes sigh. Daylight brings new trials. Blinding glare bounces off the sand until your eyes water. Lips crack, throats rasp, and even jokes run dry. The camels shuffle on, their long eyelashes shielding them from dust. You envy those eyelashes more than is reasonable. Sweat drips into your eyes, and you curse softly. Ancient Fitbit would log this as cardio plus sound of torture. But then, salvation. A faint green line on the horizon, wavering in the heat. At first you scoff, assuming another mirage. Yet the line thickens, becomes palm fronds, becomes water glinting like polished metal. Your heart lurches. Shouts rise from the caravan. Even the camels quicken their pace, ears flicking forward as though they smell the sweet relief. The oasis appears in full, ringed with trees and buzzing with life. Birds dart between branches, frogs croak, and the air feels 10 degrees cooler. You stumble toward the pool, kneel, and plunge your hands into the water. It's bliss, liquid clarity against blistered skin. You splash your face, drink greedily, and suddenly life doesn't feel like a cruel joke anymore. Around you, the caravan erupts in laughter, splashing and shouting like children on the first day of summer break. The settlement here thrives on travelers like you. Mud brick houses circle the pool, and stalls sell everything from salted fish to painted beads. You spot a merchant hawking strange charms carved from bone, claiming they ward off sand spirits. Another offers tiny glass bottles of coal for weary eyes. You buy one, mostly because your eyes feel like they've hosted a sand convention. The seller winks knowingly. Even a camel looks handsome with coal. You don't test the theory, though the image lingers, absurd and oddly comforting as evening falls. Lanterns glow around the water. Traders gather, bargaining, boasting, and retelling the same survival stories with extra dramatic flair. A storyteller launches into a saga about a prince who disguised himself as a beggar to cross the desert unnoticed. Was it true? Hard to say, but as the firelight flickers on his animated face, you realize the desert isn't only hardship. It's also a crucible, forging myths and binding strangers into shared memory. You stretch out under palm shadows, belly full, skin cooled, spirit eased. For a moment, the desert feels less like an enemy and more like a stern teacher. Merciless, yes, but willing to reward those who endure. And tomorrow, the road continues. Always onward, always uncertain, always a little bit magical in spite of itself. Morning breaks gently at the oasis, though gently is relative. The roosters here sound less like cheerful wake-up calls and more like irritated alarms you can't snooze. You rub the sleep from your eyes, sip water that feels like liquid treasure, and ready yourself for the next stretch. The caravan gathers supplies, dates, barley, fresh skins of water, because everyone knows what waits ahead. Another battle with sand, heat, and that gnawing uncertainty that comes when the horizon offers no promise of safety. You set out, footsteps sinking into the soft earth that quickly yields to dust. Soon the lush oasis is just a memory, shrinking behind you until it dissolves into the haze. Forward lies emptiness. Not scenic emptiness, not minimalist interior design emptiness, just ruthless, in-your-face nothingness. You wonder, not for the first time, what sort of person decided. Yes, this looks like the perfect place to haul silk, spices, and my last shred of sanity. By midday, the sun takes its place as your personal tormentor. Sand burns underfoot, the air ripples, and your mouth feels lined with cotton. Still, you march. Caravan bells jingle faintly, a sound that feels both reassuring and absurdly cheerful for this kind of misery. The camels chew cud with enviable calm, as if mocking your fragile human limitations. Historical fact: the Taklamakan Desert in Central Asia, one of the Silk Road's most feared crossings, was nicknamed the Desert of Death. Caravans skirted its edges because cutting across the heart of it meant near certain doom. You glance around and mutter, "Okay, but which genius named it Taklamakan? Sounds like a bad board game expansion pack." As night falls, exhaustion drapes itself over you. The caravan halts, torches flicker, and you curl beneath your blanket. Stars bloom overhead, an infinite scattering of silver that makes your troubles look microscopic. Someone in the group points to constellations, tracing them like ancient road signs. A quirky tidbit drifts into the circle. Certain traders used polished bronze mirrors at night, hoping to capture starlight for luck before a desert crossing. Was it superstition? Almost certainly. But superstition is cheaper than therapy and arguably more portable. Morning again. The desert plays its favorite trick, mirages. You squint, swear you see water, then watch it dissolve as you approach. The caravan groans in unison, as if the land itself is gaslighting you. At one point, a companion swears he sees a city, walls, towers, even banners rippling. You'd laugh, but your eyes, traitorous things, almost agree. Historians still argue whether certain accounts of lost cities in deserts were actual ruins glimpsed through shifting dunes or simply mirages playing cruel tricks. Either way, you don't linger long enough to test it. The ordeal continues for days, time losing its edges. Meals become a blur of dates, dried meat, and the occasional mouthful of warm, slightly suspicious water. Jokes thin out but never vanish. One merchant insists his camel snores louder than thunder. Another swears he'll open a spa when he gets home, sauna included, because apparently he's grown fond of suffering. You laugh more than you should, because laughter here feels like rebellion against the desert's indifference. Then, without warning, the land changes. The dunes flatten, the soil hardens, and a faint green smudge rises on the horizon. At first you distrust it. Your eyes have betrayed you too many times. But hour by hour, the smudge sharpens. Palm tops poke into the sky, followed by the shimmer of water. This time it's real. Relief surges through the group like a second wind. Even the camels perk up, ears twitching, pace quickening. The new oasis greets you with shade and songbirds. Villagers rush to meet the caravan, offering cool drinks and baskets of figs in exchange for trinkets and stories. You collapse under a tree, gulping sweet water that tastes almost like forgiveness. Nearby, children chase each other, shrieking with joy, while merchants haggle loudly in half a dozen languages. Life blooms here, stubborn and radiant, a reminder that the desert cannot win everywhere. Later that evening, you wander the edge of the pool. Lanterns bob, casting ripples of light across the water. Traders recount the worst moments of the crossing, voices heavy with pride, as if survival itself is currency worth more than silk or jade. One old traveler claims he once followed a caravan led by a man who navigated the desert blindfolded, relying only on the feel of wind on his skin. The circle gasps, laughs, and someone mutters, either a legend or the first GPS prototype. You smile. After all, maybe stories like these are how people trick themselves into braving the impossible. You lie back in the sand, cool now under the stars. The desert's grip has loosened, at least for the night. And though you know tomorrow brings more challenges, for this moment you let your guard down. The dunes have tested you, but they have not broken you. Not yet. The morning air at the oasis carries a sweetness you almost don't trust. Too fragrant, too soft, like the desert is setting you up for another cruel joke. But today's horizon promises more than sand. Word ripples through the caravan. The famed cities of Sogdiana are ahead, crossroads of trade and intrigue, where caravans splinter into rumors as much as they do into goods. You shoulder your pack, tug at your cloak, and follow the sound of camels grumbling like disgruntled librarians. The path threads through valleys lined with tamarisk shrubs and willow trees, then spreads into wide plains. In the distance, walls rise, mud brick and timber, capped with watchtowers. You're told this is Samarkand, a name that hums like music. Inside, streets coil like yarn spilled from a basket. Stalls cram every corner. Baskets of apricots glow like captured suns, silks ripple in every shade of dream, and somewhere someone is hawking genuine Persian perfume, which smells suspiciously like goat soap with ambition. Mainstream historical fact: Samarkand, long before its later glory under Timur, already flourished as a Silk Road hub, famed for its crafts, its fertile valley, and its role as a cultural broker between China, Persia, and the steppe tribes. Walking these streets, you feel that melting pot intensity. The air tastes of cardamom and roasted lamb. Merchants argue in Sogdian, Persian, and a smattering of Chinese. Even the pigeons seem bilingual. At the caravanserai, news flows faster than wine. Traders gossip about routes, prices, and wars. One bearded man leans in to whisper of a lost caravan swallowed by dunes. Another swears he's seen Roman glass goblets traded here for Chinese silk, proof that the road really does bind empires together. A quirky tidbit: Sogdian merchants often carried family letters sewn into their clothing, tiny scrolls inked with messages of home, prayer, or shrewd reminders about debt. Imagine finding a centuries-old IOU stitched into someone's sleeve. Talk about wearable finance. Evening descends, lanterns flicker, and the city hums like a hive. You're swept toward a courtyard where music coils through the air. Strings pluck, drums patter, voices chant in harmonies that don't quite align with your ear, but still soothe. A dancer spins, skirts flashing crimson and gold, and you notice foreign guests, Greeks, Persians, perhaps even a lone Roman, clapping offbeat but smiling wide. The spectacle reminds you that pleasure is also cargo here. Songs, rhythms, laughter, all traded, all carried forward. Over spiced wine, arguments flare. One scholar claims Alexander the Great left descendants in this region, a bloodline of half-legendary kings. Another insists such talk is drunken nonsense. Historians still argue whether Sogdiana's legacy is more Persian, Hellenistic, or its own unique blend, because every empire tried to brand this land, but none fully owned it. You sip your cup, amused, realizing that identity, like trade, is never static. Later, you wander the quieter alleys. A boy offers you a piece of flatbread, still warm. The smell anchors you. The taste is humble, grounding. The noise fades as you stumble upon a painted shrine, candles flickering before a figure you don't recognize. Your guide explains, the Sogdians borrowed freely, Zoroastrian fire altars, Buddhist icons, even traces of Greek deities. Faith here is like fabric woven from 1,000 threads. It doesn't clash, it coexists somehow. Night deepens. The caravan gathers in its lodging, tallying goods and counting coin. You lie awake, ears tuned to the muffled heartbeat of the city beyond the walls. Somewhere a rooster crows prematurely. Somewhere else, laughter bursts, sharp and fleeting. You think of the long road still stretching west, of deserts survived and mountains yet to come. Samarkand cradles you tonight, but it is also a reminder: crossroads are never destinations. They are pauses, breaths, before the world demands more steps. And as you drift toward sleep, you whisper a promise to yourself. Whatever shadows lie further down the Silk Road, you'll meet them with open eyes, and maybe, just maybe, a sarcastic quip. Dawn slips over Samarkand with a gentleness that almost convinces you to stay. Almost. The caravan stirs with reluctant groans, like students forced to a morning class after a night of questionable decisions. You sling your pack again, wave a half-hearted farewell to the spice sellers and silk hawkers, and fall into the procession heading west. Ahead looms the most intimidating rumor of the journey: the passes of the Pamir Mountains, sometimes whispered as the roof of the world. Not exactly comforting bedtime terminology. The path tightens into a ribbon climbing through rocky valleys. Jagged cliffs glare down as if sizing you up. The air thins quickly, the wind grows sharp, and your breath becomes a miser, doling out each inhale like a tax collector. Snow crowns peaks even in summer, glowing faintly violet at sunrise. You wonder if this is where maps end and monsters begin. Spoiler, it's just more mountains, but they feel mythic enough to deserve their own genre. Mainstream historical fact: caravans actually did haul themselves through these passes, threading between present-day Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and China. Archaeological finds suggest traders lugged bolts of silk, lapis lazuli, and even jade across this punishing terrain. Some scholars think the Pamirs were one of the hardest choke points of the Silk Road. Less road and more endurance test. You confirm this by slipping on loose shale for the fourth time. As the climb worsens, your donkey decides to unionize, halting mid-path with a glare that says, "Nope." You plead, bribe, threaten, flatter, and finally give up, carrying part of your load yourself. The donkey smirks. Quirky tidbit: local folklore claimed snow spirits haunted these passes, sometimes guiding travelers to safety, sometimes luring them into avalanches. Basically, mountain customer service was a gamble. By nightfall, you huddle near a rock ledge with the caravan. Fires sputter weakly in the oxygen-thin air. A merchant unwraps a preserved treat, dried melon slices from the plains below. Sweetness shocks your tongue after a day of biting wind and bland rations. Someone begins to tell stories of Alexander's armies marching here centuries before, of demons carved into cliffs, of heavenly horses rumored to drink from these streams. Historians still argue whether those heavenly horses were just exceptionally well-bred steppe breeds or the stuff of overactive marketing. Either way, emperors fought wars to get them. The next days blur into a rhythm of climb, stumble, breathe, repeat. At times, the path narrows to a ledge no wider than a table, sheer drop yawning beside you. You shuffle sideways, heart thudding, promising every deity you can name that you'll never complain about sand again. Somewhere below, a turquoise river rides like a living vein, glinting in the sun. Snowmelt cascades into waterfalls that roar louder than your courage. Yet there are moments of awe too. You pass a stupa built by Buddhist monks, its white dome stubborn against the cold. Prayer flags snap in the wind, bright scraps of faith defying stone and sky. The caravan halts briefly, traders bow their heads, and you realize this road is more than commerce. It's pilgrimage, memory, and survival braided together. One night, clouds part and stars burn so vividly it feels like you could scoop them with your hand. You lie awake, bundled against the chill, staring upward. The Silk Road isn't just on the ground. You think it's mirrored above, a celestial trade route no one can tax. You laugh quietly, the sound whipped away by wind, and let sleep claim you. When dawn comes again, the mountains relent, slopes easing toward valleys greener than you dared hope. You stumble into the new day ragged but alive, whispering thanks to stubborn lungs, sarcastic donkeys, and maybe even those snow spirits. The Pamirs have let you pass, for now. The valleys spill into gentler plains, and suddenly you realize the nightmare climb of the Pamirs has given way to the promise of the West. Every step feels lighter now, as if gravity itself decided you've earned a discount. Ahead, a ripple of tents and domes marks the encampments near the Caspian routes, crossroads buzzing with languages you can barely keep up with. Greek, Persian, Latin, and tongues you'll never untangle pour into your ears, a human tide thicker than any caravan you've yet joined. The air smells different, less dry dust, more salt from the distant Caspian Sea, mingled with fried fish and roasted nuts. Traders call out their wares, bolts of shimmering silk, jars of honey, carpets thick enough to swallow your ankles. You find yourself laughing at how ordinary it all seems after weeks of hardship. Shopping. That's the grand finale of survival. Haggling over walnuts. Mainstream fact. Goods crossing into Europe often funneled through hubs like Merv, Bokhara, and eventually onto routes skirting the Caspian before reaching Byzantium. From there, silks dazzled Roman elites so much that senators once tried banning the fabric, claiming it was decadent and immoral. Spoiler, no one listened, because silk feels amazing. Quirky tidbit? Some records suggest dyed beetles were mixed into certain fabrics to create crimson hues, meaning the nobles of Rome may have strutted around in what was essentially very expensive bug juice. Fashion, as always, demands strange sacrifices. Historians still argue whether Roman suspicion of silk was really about morality or simply about economics. Leaders feared too much gold was draining eastward. You glance at the glittering stalls and think, they weren't wrong. Your own coin pouch is vanishing faster than a magician's rabbit 18 night. You sit with the caravan one last time. Fires flicker, merchants count profits, and someone strums a stringed lute, coaxing notes that sway like the sea. You feel the long miles stretching behind you. Deserts, bazaars, oases, mountains, woven together into a single thread. The Silk Road isn't a road at all, you realize, but a pulse that binds worlds, a rhythm carrying dreams and debts alike. As sleep creeps over you, the thought lingers. You have walked in shadows where history still whispers, and somehow, against every odd, you've reached the edge of the known West. Tomorrow, the road might split again, toward Byzantium, Rome, or beyond. But for tonight, you finally rest. Word count, 1,084. Wind down, 300 words. And now, let's slow everything down. You've journeyed far enough for one night. The mountains, the deserts, the crowded markets, they can all fade gently into the background, like dreams dissolving at dawn. Breathe deeply and let your shoulders soften. You've carried that pack long enough. Picture yourself lying not on rough ground, but on something soft and familiar, the weight of the day lifting away. The noises of traders and donkeys drift into silence, replaced by the calm hum of your own room. A fan whirs, steady and low, like the endless wind across the plains. But here it soothes, it comforts, it steadies your heartbeat. Let your mind wander lightly over the faces you've met, the stalls you've passed, the colors and scents of that endless road. They don't need sharp edges now, just faint watercolor blurs, safe and gentle. You've survived deserts and passes, bartered with strangers, and even laughed at the absurdities along the way. That is enough. Now, give yourself permission to rest. There's nowhere else you need to go tonight. The Silk Road will keep stretching without you, an endless path across history, but you don't have to walk it anymore. Instead, let yourself drift into quiet, into safety, into sleep. Close your eyes. Let the weight of blankets feel like the calm embrace of night itself. The shadows of the Silk Road grow soft, and your breath slows to match. You are safe. You are here, and you can finally, deeply rest. Good night.